Hey artists, in this video we're going to talk about our abstract drawing project called Crumpled Paper Art. For this project you're going to need 8.5 by 11 printer paper, the thin kind of paper, and I used Sharpie markers, but you could also use colored pencils. You're going to crumple up the paper into a ball and then uncrumple it, and then look at all of the creases and folds on your paper that you crumpled, and you're going to use a pen or a black marker to go over all of those crinkled lines. So while you're working, I started from the center and then I took my paper and I turned it as I was working. So you're looking for the folds in the paper from crumpling it that you can outline to make some abstract shapes. This is going to help you create some lines that are organically formed from crumpling the paper, and we're going to fill in these shapes. So it helps if you rotate the paper and sometimes lift the paper at a different angle so that you can see where all of those creases are. This took me about 20 minutes. It might take you longer depending on how much your paper is crinkled. So while you're working on this part, you can be listening to some music and relaxing, so you can really take your time with this step. You're going to want to make sure that the entire paper has lines and sections from corner to corner and edge to edge. So I worked from the middle and then worked my way towards the edges. You can do this in a different way. Maybe you want to start from the top of the paper and go to the bottom of the paper. When you're done, make sure that you put the cap back on the marker or the pen that you use and put it back on the shelf where it belongs. Your paper should look like a black and white line drawing with lots of shapes. Then you're going to choose a color scheme. I chose to do this with Sharpie markers, but you could also do it with colored pencils. Pick one marker color to start out with first. I chose to start off with a pink shade. What you're going to do is color in the shapes that you drew, and you're going to try and avoid having them touching edge to edge. So you want to make sure that the first color that you choose, you space it out around the entire paper, trying to make sure that none of the shapes are touching each other, making sure that there's at least 1 or 2 white spaces in between. The goal of this is to have a mosaic effect where all of the pieces are spaced out. So none of the colors should be touching edge to edge. So my drawing looked like this, and then I was ready to choose my next color. For my next color, I chose to use a blue shade. And I was looking at where the pink shapes were and trying to add the blue touching the pink shapes. This way, as I add more colors to my color scheme, I'm helping space them all out and preventing them from touching each other. Again, I was rotating the paper while I did this so that I could look more closely at each of the shapes and try and find spaces to add the blue shade. Once I was done with the blue, I moved on to the next color in my color scheme. The next color that I chose was a darker shade of blue. So I was looking at the blue shapes and the pink shapes and trying to see where I could add this darker shade of blue, so that way as I kept adding colors to my color scheme, I was making areas that I could use a new color without having the edges touching each other. For this one, I started going around the border first, looking at the outside edge where I could add this dark blue shade. Then I worked my way in towards the middle. I kept rotating my paper so that I was working in the areas that were closer to me. That made it a little bit easier to color in turning the paper. Once I was finished with the blue shade, I added the cap back onto the marker, put that marker away, and picked a new color. The color that I did next was a light green. So I was looking at all of the white spaces and trying to find spaces where I could add this light green without having the greens touching each other. Sometimes the vertices or the points of the shapes were touching each other, but I tried not to have the shapes touching edge to edge. That way the design was more abstract and interesting to look at. Again, I keep rotating the paper as I'm working because it makes it more comfortable for my hand while I'm coloring in those shapes. Once I was done with the green marker, I put the cap on it and I chose a new color for filling in the next set of shapes. The next color that I worked with was a dark shade of purple. And I was looking at the shapes that were still white and trying to plan where I could add purple into my design and keeping the purples from touching each other edge to edge. Everyone's design for this project is going to look different based on the way that they crumpled the paper and the lines that they drew, and the color scheme that they choose. Once I was done with the purple, I put the cap back on the marker and I chose another value. For this next value, I chose a hot pink. As I'm running out of space, it's a little bit easier for me to find the areas that I need to color in with the hot pink. I made a little mistake, so I made the line more bold with black. Once you're done, make sure that you write your name on your paper.